Remaining faithful in relationships. Remaining faithful in relationships. Love, boundaries, and truth in everyday connection. Introduction. Most spiritual formation eventually meets a simple reality. You do not live alone. Faith is not only practiced in quiet mornings or private decisions. It is practiced in conversation, interruption, misunderstanding, and repair. It is practiced when someone disappoints you, when you disappoint someone, when love feels easy, and when love feels costly. This book is not a set of relational techniques. It is a quiet companion for becoming a faithful person with other people, loving without self-erasure, holding boundaries without hardness, speaking truth without cruelty, and learning to remain steady when relationships feel uncertain. Chapter 1. Love without losing yourself. There is a form of love that looks holy from the outside but feels hollow on the inside. It is love that keeps saying yes while the soul quietly collapses. Love that smiles while the heart grows resentful. Love that stays nice while the inside becomes brittle. Many people have confused this with faithfulness. But losing yourself is not the same as loving someone. Love is meant to be offered freely, not extracted from you through fear. It is meant to be given from wholeness, not from collapse. When you lose yourself in relationships, it's often because you have learned that connection is maintained through self-erasure. You keep peace by becoming smaller. You keep closeness by swallowing truth. You keep safety by managing other people's emotions. This can feel like kindness, but over time, it becomes a quiet form of dishonesty, because the person you are offering is not the person you actually are. God does not ask you to disappear in order to love. Love your neighbor as yourself. Mark 12:31. That verse is not permission for self-centeredness. It is a boundary built into love. It assumes a self-worth loving. It assumes you are also someone in the room. Love includes the neighbor. Love also includes you. A faithful person does not offer love by abandoning their own interior life. They learn to stay present to God, present to the other person, and present to themselves. This is not selfishness, it is integrity. You cannot love well if you are constantly leaving yourself behind. Some people have never been taught the difference between empathy and absorption. Empathy notices. Absorption takes on. Empathy can remain steady. Absorption becomes overwhelmed. Loving without losing yourself means you can care without carrying what isn't yours. You can listen without becoming responsible for outcomes. You can show compassion without taking ownership of someone else's choices. This kind of love is quieter. It is less dramatic. It does not require you to prove devotion through exhaustion. It allows you to remain a person while you love. You may need time to learn this, especially if you have practiced self-erasure for years. But formation is patient. God is patient. And the first step is often small, noticing the places you disappear and asking God to make you whole there. Faithfulness in relationships begins here. Love that does not require you to abandon yourself. Chapter 2. Boundaries that protect love. Many people fear boundaries because they associate them with distance. They imagine boundaries as walls, cold, defensive, rejecting. But a boundary can also be a form of care. A boundary can be love made sustainable. A boundary simply says, this belongs here, and this does not. When there are no boundaries, relationships often become confusing. Expectations grow without being named. Responsibilities blur. Resentment builds quietly, and then, eventually, love becomes strained. Not because love failed, but because love was asked to carry what it was never meant to carry. Boundaries protect love from becoming coercion. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Matthew 5:37. This is not harsh language. It is clean language. It calls for clarity rather than pressure. Boundaries are not about controlling other people. They are about being truthful about what you can carry. They are about living within your God-given limits. Some boundaries are about time. Some are about access. Some are about tone. Some are about what you will participate in and what you will not. A boundary can be as simple as, I can't talk about this right now. Or, I'm not available for that. Or, I'm willing to continue this conversation when we can speak respectfully. A boundary can also be internal, what you will allow to live inside you after an interaction. You can refuse to rehearse someone's criticism for hours. You can refuse to keep trying to fix what is not yours to fix. Boundaries protect the inner life, so love remains clean. Without boundaries, people often swing between overgiving and sudden withdrawal. They give too much until they can't give at all. Boundaries prevent that swing. They create steadiness. If you're learning boundaries, you may feel guilty at first. That guilt is often the echo of an old pattern. If I don't give everything, I'm unloving. But boundaries are not the opposite of love. They are often what allows love to continue without poisoning the soul. A faithful relationship is not one where everyone gets everything they want. It is one where love remains truthful, steady, and humane. Boundaries help create that. Chapter 3. Truth without harshness. Some people avoid truth because they fear conflict. Others speak truth like a weapon because they are tired of being misunderstood. Both are understandable, especially if you've been hurt. But neither leads to faithful connection. Faithful truth is different. It is honest without cruelty. It is clear without domination. It does not rush. It does not corner. It does not punish. Speaking truth often begins with learning your own tone. Pressure can make you sharp. Fear can make you defensive. Exhaustion can make you blunt. But truth spoken under those forces often creates more damage than clarity. Gentle truth requires steadiness. Speaking the truth in love. Ephesians 4:15. That phrase holds two things together that people often separate: truth and love. Love without truth becomes enabling or self-erasure. Truth without love becomes harshness. Speaking truth in love means you refuse to use honesty as a way to vent. You refuse to turn someone into your target. You speak because you want wholeness, not because you want to win. Sometimes truthful speech is a simple naming. That hurt. Sometimes it is a boundary. I can't continue if we speak like this. Sometimes it is an honest confession. I was wrong. Sometimes it is clarity about expectations. This is what I can offer. This is what I can't. Truth, when spoken well, does not escalate. It lands. It is also okay to be quiet until you can speak cleanly. Silence can be loving when it prevents harm. This is not avoidance. It is restraint. Some relationships require truth delivered slowly because the person cannot receive too much at once. Some require truth delivered clearly because vagueness has become a hiding place. Wisdom is needed. God supplies wisdom. Truth is not meant to be used as pressure. It is meant to be used as light, and light, when it is given gently, can change the whole atmosphere of a relationship. If you have been afraid to speak truth, begin small. If you have been harsh with truth, begin gentle. Either way, faithfulness is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming whole. Where love and truth belong together. Chapter 4. Faithfulness in conflict. Conflict is not always a sign that something is broken. Sometimes conflict is simply the place where two realities meet. Different expectations, different needs, different perceptions, different histories. Even good relationships can have real conflict because two human beings are involved. The question is not whether conflict will happen. The question is how you will carry yourself when it does. A faithful person does not need to avoid conflict at all costs, and they do not need to dominate conflict to feel safe. They learn to remain steady. Let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. James 1:19. This is not a command to be silent forever. It is a posture of restraint. It makes room for understanding. It slows the escalation that turns conflict into damage. When conflict arises, the nervous system often reacts first. The body tightens. The mind prepares arguments. The heart tries to protect itself. In those moments, you may be tempted to say what is sharp or to withdraw completely. Faithfulness looks like staying present without becoming reactive. This does not mean you tolerate mistreatment. It means you refuse to meet chaos with chaos. You can set boundaries. You can end conversations. You can seek distance when necessary. But you can do these things without becoming harsh and without losing your soul. Conflict also reveals what you truly value: being understood or being loving, being right or being faithful, protecting your ego or protecting the relationship's integrity. Sometimes the most faithful choice is to name what is happening. I can feel myself getting reactive. I need a moment. That is not weakness. That is wisdom. And sometimes conflict reveals something that must be addressed, not managed. Faithfulness does not mean pretending. It means pursuing truth and peace together, patiently. Not every conflict will resolve quickly. Some take time. Some require repeated conversations. Some require accepting limitations. But a faithful person does not abandon love because conflict exists. They learn to walk through it with steadiness. Chapter 5. Disappointment without withdrawal. Disappointment is part of relationship because people are finite. They forget. They fail. They misunderstand. They change. Sometimes they cannot give what you hoped they would. Sometimes they choose what you wish they wouldn't. When disappointment arrives, many people protect themselves by withdrawing. Not physically always, but inwardly. They shut down. They stop expecting. They stop being honest. They remain present, but emotionally absent. This can feel like safety, but it often becomes distance. Faithfulness does not require you to ignore disappointment. It invites you to carry it with God, rather than turning it into bitterness. Bear with one another and forgive each other. Colossians 3:13. This verse is not permission for ongoing harm. It is a recognition that ordinary life together requires patience and repair. People will need bearing with. There will be friction. There will be moments where grace is required. The key is not pretending you weren't hurt. The key is what you do with the hurt. Some disappointment needs truth spoken. Some needs forgiveness offered. Some needs boundaries clarified. Some needs grieving, accepting that a person cannot be what you wanted. Faithfulness includes grieving without hardening. If you don't grieve, you may start collecting disappointments like stones in your pocket. Eventually, the weight changes how you walk. But if you bring disappointment to God, you allow it to become part of formation rather than part of resentment. Disappointment can teach you where you've been asking someone to carry what only God can carry. It can teach you where expectations were unspoken. It can teach you where you need clearer boundaries, and it can teach you how to remain kind without pretending. Remaining faithful in relationships does not mean you never feel disappointment. It means disappointment does not become your identity. It does not become the lens through which you see everything. It does not turn your love into withdrawal. Faithfulness keeps the heart open, even when it must be wise. Chapter 6. Repair and return. Every relationship between imperfect people will require repair, not as a dramatic project, but as a normal rhythm. Misunderstandings happen, words land wrong, tone becomes sharp. Someone gets defensive, someone withdraws. Small ruptures form. If they are ignored, they widen. If they are repaired, the relationship becomes steadier. Repair is one of the most faithful things you can practice. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another. Ephesians 4:32. Tender-heartedness is not fragility. It is the willingness to stay human. It is the refusal to become hardened by friction. Repair often begins with humility. Your part, not the other person's. This is important because pressure can make repair feel like losing. But repair is not losing. Repair is choosing wholeness over pride. Sometimes repair is an apology without explanation. Sometimes it is returning to a conversation with a calmer tone. Sometimes it is admitting you were wrong. Sometimes it is naming what hurt without attacking. Repair also includes receiving repair, letting someone apologize without making them pay, letting the relationship be restored without keeping a scoreboard. This is difficult if you've been wounded repeatedly. Wisdom matters. Boundaries matter. But where repair is possible, it is a form of grace. Not all relationships will repair equally. Some people will not take responsibility. Some will not apologize. Some will continue patterns that require distance. Faithfulness does not mean you force repair. It means you remain clean inside yourself, willing to repair where possible, and willing to be wise where it is not. Return is part of spiritual life. Return is also part of relational life. A faithful person becomes someone who can return without shame and who can invite return without domination. That steadiness changes the whole atmosphere of connection. Chapter 7. Refusing control and rescuing. In relationships, one of the most subtle temptations is control. Control can look like fixing, like managing, like rescuing, like taking responsibility for someone else's feelings, choices, or outcomes. It often begins with good intentions. You want peace. You want safety. You want things to go well. But control is exhausting, and it often creates the very instability it is trying to prevent, because people can feel when they are being managed. Faithfulness is different. Faithfulness respects the boundary between what is yours and what is theirs. Do not be anxious about anything. Philippians 4:6. Anxiety often fuels control. When you are anxious, you try to secure outcomes through effort. You try to hold the relationship together by over-functioning. You take responsibility for things that were never assigned to you. Refusing control does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop trying to be the savior in the relationship. You can love someone and still let them choose. You can support someone and still let them carry consequences. You can be present and still refuse to be responsible for their inner world. Rescuing can feel compassionate, but it often prevents growth, both theirs and yours. It trains you to overextend and trains them to depend. Faithfulness is steadier. It says, I will be here in love, but I will not abandon myself or God by trying to control what I cannot control. This is also where boundaries protect love. A boundary keeps your help from becoming self-erasure. It keeps your compassion from becoming overreach. When you refuse control, your relationships often become clearer. Not always easier, but clearer. You stop negotiating with anxiety. You stop living inside other people's reactions. You become more able to speak truth calmly, and you begin to experience a quieter trust. God can work in people's lives without you managing everything. That trust is part of remaining faithful. Chapter 8. Staying present without ownership. There is a way of being with people that is faithful but not fused. You stay present, you listen, you care, you show up, but you do not take ownership of what belongs to them. You do not carry their choices as your assignment. You do not absorb their chaos as your identity. This is one of the most mature forms of love. It is calm, it is steady, it is not dramatic. It is simply faithful presence without self-erasure. Let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works. Hebrews 10:24. Encouragement is not control. It is not coercion. It is not rescuing. It is influence through love, inviting what is good without demanding it. Staying present without ownership means you stop confusing compassion with responsibility. You can sit with someone in pain without fixing it. You can witness someone struggle without taking it into your own body. You can speak truth without trying to force change. You can remain kind even when someone remains difficult. This does not mean you tolerate harm. Presence without ownership still includes wisdom. You may need distance. You may need limits. You may need to say no. Faithfulness is not passivity. It is love shaped by truth. A faithful relational life is not one where everyone stays close and everything resolves. It is one where your inner life remains ordered, so that love does not make you disappear, truth does not make you harsh, and boundaries do not make you cold. Remaining faithful in relationships is not a single achievement. It is a long practice. A practice of returning to God. A practice of staying human. A practice of loving steadily. And over time, that steadiness becomes a shelter, both for you and for others. Conclusion. Relationships are one of the primary places faith becomes real, not in theory, but in tone, in patience, in restraint, in honesty, in repair, in boundaries that protect love, in truth spoken without harshness, in staying present without becoming responsible for what you cannot control. You won't do this perfectly, but you can do it faithfully. If you want one simple beginning, let it be this. Before your next conversation, take one quiet breath and remember you are not alone inside the relationship. God is here too. And from that steadiness, love becomes more sustainable, one ordinary connection at a time.